Welcome back everybody, this is Awais back with another video. This is the first video of JavaScript functional programming, and in this video we are going to learn how we can create functions and what is the difference between anonymous function and a function which is assigned to a variable, and I'll give you some tips which will make your code smaller, readable and more efficient. So yeah, let's get started with the functional programming in JavaScript. And yeah, if you haven't subscribed to the channel, make sure you subscribe, and if you like the video, smash that like button. That being said, let's get started. Welcome back guys, this is Awais back with the first video of JavaScript functional programming. This is the first video, and in this video we are going to talk about first class function and few topics. For example, assigning functions to a variable, passing function as an argument, closure and returning functions, and high order functions. We'll cover all of these concepts in this video. Before we start this video, I want to say if you haven't watched my complete JavaScript tutorial for beginners, it's about 3 hours long. You should watch that before watching this video, because I'm going to be talking about a somewhat advanced topic in this video. I mean, trying to explain to you how a function works and different scenarios of the functions in JavaScript. Now, first, what is a function? Well, console.log is a function which basically log on the console. So we're just passing a string. Let's just say hello world. I'm going to save the file, refresh it, and there you go. We got the hello world printed on the console. I'm going to delete it. Now it's time for us to create one function, and we're going to talk about what is the difference between using that function with parentheses and without parentheses. Okay, so let's just type function. We'll just say add. Okay, and then we are going to pass in two parameters, x and y, and then we're going to return x plus y from this function. Now we're going to use this function now. So I'm going to type console.log, and we can use this function add, and then we are going to use the parentheses. We have to pass in the parameters to get the addition of those two. So here we will just type maybe let's just say 2, 2, and then add a semicolon. Now let's save the file and refresh it. Now as you can see, we get 2 as a return value. So now we pass in 2 and 2 into this function, and it returned the value of x plus y. So we got the return value. Now what if I just delete parentheses and the parameters inside the parentheses? Let's just delete them. I'm gonna save it, and I'm gonna refresh the page. And now as you can see, we did not get any return value. You might be thinking, oh, these are the parameters, so we didn't pass them, that's why we didn't get the return value. But we make it easier. So I'm just going to delete these parameters as well to let you guys understand a little bit easier. So we just return 5 now from this add function. It says add, but it's not adding anything. Okay, so now I'm going to save it, I'm going to refresh the page, and even though we don't have any parameters, we still get the function code. We don't get the return value. Now what if I add parentheses here? Okay, let's save the file and refresh it. Now instead of the function, we are getting a return value. So the difference between using a function with parentheses is getting a returned value from a function. So whatever the calculation happens in a function, that will be returned. But if you don't use parentheses, you just type the name of the function, it will return a function itself. We will look at this, why it is very useful. Right, but first let me explain to you what is the difference between assigning a function or creating a function by itself, or assigning a function to a variable. Now here we have an add function which is returning 5. We are using add here. So what I'm going to do down here, I'm going to create a variable subtract. I'm going to assign a function to it, which is going to take 2 parameters, x, y, and then it will return x minus y. Okay, now we have assigned this function to a variable. Now what if I try to use this function? So I'm gonna console.log, and then we use the subtract, a variable name, use the parentheses, and we need to pass in 2 parameters. So let's just say 5, 2, right, which should give us a value of 3. Oops, I'm just going to delete that. Let's save the file, and I'm just going to comment out this add console.log. Let's refresh the page, and now we got the value of 3. Okay, so you've seen the function assigning to a variable and a function without assigning a variable. Now what if I move this? Let me just cut this and then paste it on the top. Now if I just refresh the page, I am getting an error because it says the type error subtract is not a function. It does not know where to find a function. The reason why it doesn't know is because we have assigned a function to a variable, and when you assign a function to a variable, it cannot be used before it is declared. Now if I move this down, and now the compiler comes to this line of code and it finds out, oh, there is a function called subtract. It's actually, there is a variable called subtract which has a function which will return x minus y, and then we're using this function, and then it will not give us an error. So I'm just gonna save the file, refresh it, and we get 3 as a return value. Now here we are returning add, but we're returning 5. Let's just type 2 parameters here as well, and we will just say x plus y. Okay, that's what it's supposed to return. Now what if I move this function? Let me just cut this, and let's just say we will move this after subtract here, right? So now here, if I try to use a function on the top, so let's do a console.log. So now here we'll just say add function. We pass in 2 values, 2, 2, which will return us 4, and then we will use a console.log, and then we use the subtract. We pass in 2 value, let's just say 5, 2. Now both of the functions are there, but the difference between this function is assigned to a variable, and this is a standalone function without a variable. So if I save the file, I'm just gonna actually comment this console log out. Let's just refresh the page, and now as you can see, the add function is still there. We can still get 2, 2, which is adding, and then we get the return value of 4. But when it comes to subtract, it says subtract is not a function. So I hope you understood the concept. When you assign a variable, you assign a function to a variable, it cannot be used before it is declared. But when you use the anonymous function without a variable or just the anonymous function, that can be used before declaring it, because the JavaScript compiler automatically takes all of these functions and put them on the top of the file. So that's the difference between assigning a function to a variable or using an anonymous function. Now we've looked at these two concepts, and I hope you understood that. Now it's time for us to go back and visit why it is useful when you assign a function without parentheses and what we can do with it. So let's just comment out all this code here, and then I'm going to come down to next line, and here let's just do a bit of console.log, and I'm gonna do hello world. I'm gonna make a duplicate of it, and then here we just say hello YouTube, and we can say hello Twitter, hello Facebook. All right, so we have 4 console log. Well, console.log is a pretty small function here. It doesn't take that long to write that out. But for sometimes you got really huge functions which takes a bit of time to write down, so you want to short those functions. So what we can do here, we can create a variable called line, or whatever the name you want to give, and I'm going to type console.log, okay, and add a parenthesis. Now as you can see, we have assigned this console.log to a line. Now I'm just going to leave this code here because I don't want to write that again. But what I will do, I will just say line, and then use that function, and I will just say hello world. What do you think which will be returned? I'm actually going to comment them out. Oops, comment them out. Let's save the file and refresh it. All right, now as you can see that it says line is not a function. Okay, it's not a function because we are actually returning a value from a console.log because we are using parentheses. Now what if I just remove the parentheses and save it and refresh the page, and now there we go, we can use the hello world. The reason why is because if I go here and I'll just say console.log and I'll just use a line without parentheses, which will return us a function code, not a return value. I'm gonna refresh the page, and there we go. So we are actually getting all the code which are available in console.log, assigning that code to a line variable, which can use the same code available in console.log, not a return value. Now, if I add a parentheses again, and let's refresh the page, there we go. It is undefined because we are basically using console.log a return value which is undefined right now. There is nothing in there, and passing that into a line variable which is of course undefined. Let me clear it up again. So here, if I go just a console.log and I'll just write that function, I won't pass any value. Let's just refresh the page, and it is undefined at the moment. It wouldn't print out anything because it's just a console.log, but if you had a variable which has the console.log return value, which will be undefined, right? So that's the difference between using a function with parentheses, and I think I've given you an idea that how you can make this useful. So you can just assign the function code to a new variable, which is going to be a lot shorter, and then you can use that as well, which is going to make your actual function way smaller. So we've covered pretty much 4 concepts here. Alright, so the next concept we're gonna look at is passing functions as an argument. For that, we're gonna delete this code, and I'm gonna start with one anonymous function. And let me say that again, anonymous function is just a function without a name. So I'll just say do if, and we can say this is going, first parameter is going to be condition, second one function. And then if the condition is true, then we can call that function there. All right, so we got the function there. Now let's come down here. To use the function, I'm going to create a constant. Let's just say a is equal to 1 for now, or let's just say a is equal to, well, 1 is fine. All right, so now here, down here, I'm gonna create a couple of functions here. So let's create another function. I'll just say a is 1, and here I'll just console.log, and I'll just say as a string, we can just pass in, well, let's just say a is 1, right? And then I'm just going to add a semicolon here. Let's copy this and paste it 3 times. Now here I'll just say a is a for apple, and I will just say a for animal. Okay, now we got 3 functions down here, and then what I can do here, I can call that do if function, and I will just say if condition is true. So if I say a is equal to 1, then do this. So then call this say a is 1 function. All right, and then I can call that again, and then I think I'm calling that function. So all right, let's is equal to, we can say if a is apple, then we want to call this say a is 1. Well, we forgot to change the name, so a is apple function, and we can just say a is animal. Okay, and then here I forgot to do this. So if a is apple, then I'm going to call these functions. So say a is apple. All right, next we can use this do if, and a is equal to, well, if it's equal to, let's just say animal, or I can just make it the lowercase, oops, and then I'm gonna call this say a is animal function, right? Let's save the file and let's just refresh the page, and now the first of all it says a is 1, and now if I go here and change the value to, let's just say apple, and let's just refresh it, and now a for apple. All right, now we're gonna we can actually make this code a little bit smaller as well. I'm gonna give you a quick trick here. So now instead of creating all of these functions, what I can do here, I can say I am going to create a function right here. Alright, instead of just creating an extra function here, I can just create a function because we're passing it as a function. So if this condition is true, then it will run this function. So instead of just creating an extra function and all of these parentheses, we don't have to do that. So here, if that function is true, then we can just say return, and I will pass in, let's just say a is 1. Okay, now same thing with Apple. So I can, instead of using an anonymous function from outside, I can simply create a function here, and we can just say return, and I'll just pass in that string a is animal. Alright, and then I'm going to add a semicolon here as well. The Visual Studio Code is playing around. I don't really use this, but I'm actually using this to make a tutorial because it's just easier. Just open a file and it starts working. So we can just return it, and we can just say return this value. Now there is a trick here which I'm gonna tell you in a second. You gotta pay attention to what I'm writing right now. Okay, so here we got this well, a is a for animal. Oops, I have to write here apple for apple. Now as you can see, we don't need none of these, right? So is it going to write on the console? No, it is not going to write on the console. It's going to return this, but it's not going to write on the console because we need a function called console.log to write that. So I can either do a console.log here and then just surround it with the parentheses. That will work, but I'm gonna actually make a variable on the top which I'll just say print me, and I'll just say console.log without parentheses. Now print me is pretty big, so if we just say p, how about that? We can make it shorter, right? So now instead of using the console log, I can simply write p here. Oops, p, and then I'll just surround it with the parentheses. Now with the same thing, I'm going to just type p and then surround it with the parentheses. As you can see, I'm clearing up a few concepts here, so we don't really have to write a console log. Just use a variable, set that to console log, so it will make your code shorter. Now we've seen how we can pass in the function as an argument as well. So let's actually finish the code here. Let's just save, and I'm gonna refresh the page, and it says a for apple. So if I just change this to 1, and it's gonna say, because that condition is going to be true now, so I'll just refresh the page, and now a is 1. So that is how you can pass in a function as an argument. If you watch my JavaScript tutorials for beginners, it's like a 3-hour long video. I'll drop a link in the description anyway. So you probably be familiar with if and else statement. It's available in pretty much every language out there. Now we are going to create a function which is going to act like if and else statement. How do we do that? Let me create an anonymous function here. I'll just say if else. Right. The first thing we're going to pass in what's going to be the condition. So first parameter we just say condition, and then we need to, obviously we're going to give two functions. So if the condition is true, then run a first function, and then if condition is false, then run a second function. I know you can use the if and else statement directly, but there you can see we can do that in a functional way. So I'll just say func1 and second parameter func2 as well. Now we can say here if the condition is true, then we can just run func1, and we're gonna use the else clause here. Oops. So we can say else run this second function. All right, now we can use the we're using if and else, but still you can see that we created a function which will check a condition. If the condition is true, the first function will run, and if the condition is false, the second function will run. So you got an idea that you can pass in a multiple parameter as a functions, which is great. And yeah, that's about this for this video, guys. In the next video we will look at closures and returning functions, right? So if you like the video, smash the like button and make sure to subscribe to the channel, and if you have any questions, let me know in the comments below. Right, so I'll see you guys in the next one. Cheers.